America's largest weather modification company, Rainmaker, says it has made a major breakthrough.
Rainmaker is the first company in history to unambiguously prove we can modify the weather.
Why is that important? Well, despite cloud seeding being used around the world for decades, no one has been able to definitively connect their cloud seeding activities with actual results. This is the central challenge of cloud seeding: attribution. But now, this 130-person weather modification company based in El Segundo say they made that breakthrough. In our first ever Soon documentary, I joined Rainmaker on a cloud seeding mission.
It's currently 3:10 in the morning, and we are about to launch this drone to make it rain.
Now, I'm going back down to El Segundo to discuss their groundbreaking claim.
Roughly 30 minutes after seeding, we see it start to precipitate.
I also spoke with an expert to understand why attribution is so difficult and explore what the impacts of Rainmaker's claim could mean.
There's a lot of groups out there to claim a lot of things because the whole world needs water.
And I shared some of the good faith concerns we received from viewers with Rainmaker founder Augustus Doricko, all to answer one question: if they've really proven cloud seeding works, what happens next?
Okay, so the high level of how cloud seeding works, you have a cloud like this, and then you have to figure out if the cloud has super cooled liquid water in it. These tiny drops here that are too small to naturally precipitate. Now, how do you find the super cooled liquid water in the cloud? You can have radar on the ground, and that emits a beam into the cloud, and the amount of light that gets reflected tells you whether it's ice or liquid. You also have satellites to find if there is super cooled liquid. And if we have the right sensors and find that super cooled liquid, you'll take a drone, it'll fly up into the cloud where the supercooled liquid water is, and you emit lots of little silver iodide particles into the supercooled liquid. That will eventually freeze into snowflakes that are bigger and heavier and large enough to precipitate. You can use these same sensors to measure how much precipitation is occurring after you've changed phase from liquid to ice. That's the high level of how our cloud seeding operations run right now.
Yeah, it looks completely different from how it did before. So what's changed?
What's changed is Rainmaker's the first company in history to unambiguously prove we can modify the weather and make more snow. When we met last time, we had some plausible and suggestive evidence that cloud seeding was enhancing precipitation. Now we have this inscrutable catalog of over 80 instances, over 80 flights, where you can see the drone go up, it released silver iodide, and then precipitation happened exclusively downwind of where we were seeding. And we're the only company to have ever done that in history.
I'm curious, can you tell me more about this and why the proof is irrefutable?
These are radar scans. We were seeding from these red dots here. That's where the drones were. And so when the ice crystals are large enough to be seen in an intense color like yellow on the radar, they're precipitation sized. And then we followed those areas of enhanced reflectivity all the way to the ground.
What was it that gave you this confidence?
We've had several events where there's no background precipitation, so it's not snowing or raining at all. And then post-seeding, we see precipitation exactly downwind from where we seeded. And then now we've done that dozens and dozens of times. So it's like clockwork every time. And so that also adds to the body of evidence to say, yeah, this is from the seeding.
When was it that you guys sort of started seeing these results?
It was called Mega Op when we had our first unambiguous results. That was towards the end of January. And that was largely because we resized the particles that we were emitting. In some big puffy clouds, you can seed and you see all this stuff happen on radar, but the clearest evidence of effective weather modification was just with the naked eye. All of the water in the cloud froze, fell out as snow, and then there was a hole that opened up in the otherwise overcast day. But you could just see straight up to the sun, whereas the rest of the area where we weren't seeding still had cloud cover.
Yes. How did the team react to this? I saw the dog was there. What did the dog think?
I think the dog was excited because everybody else was.
I mean, I dropped to the ground and cried because I was like, this is years of us trying to do this, and we finally did it. One of our radar scientists called me right after that, and he was like, Caitlin, I can see it on radar, and it's happened several times in a row now. Like, I think this is it.
Yeah.
Like, this is us.
So what is the problem of attribution?
Well, I would say previously, people didn't have a way to track post-seeding. This is exactly what happened to produce precipitation. They were using statistics over a whole season or over many years, and that meant that it was really hard to say, this is exactly what we did. But now, using radar and satellite, we can say, on this day, at exactly this time, we made this much precipitation and it fell in this location.
So not only did everybody cry tears of joy, but also we had a corporate holiday and celebration, and everybody got to party a little. Actually, we tried to party hard, but then I couldn't keep people from working for more than 3 hours.
Oh
and
my.
They all went back to work that evening.
How did you cultivate this company culture?
Oh man, I've been very explicit with everybody from the beginning. Like, this is not about the money. There are way easier ways to make money than trying to modify the weather. We're striving after something that is transcendent, right? We're trying to make Earth a little bit more like heaven. And we'll never have utopia on this side of heaven, but when everybody on the team is bought into the idea that we're trying to create a little bit more paradisical a world, everybody works a lot harder.
There's an important caveat to all of this. Rainmaker hasn't gone through peer review. And without sharing their underlying data, independent scientists cannot validate their claim. Experts have raised skepticism on their claims. So we called Professor Bob Rauber, an atmospheric scientist who actually worked on Snowy, the paper that inspired Augustus' company, to get his takes on the challenges of attribution and the viability of commercial cloud seeding. I guess I'd just be curious to hear your perspective as an academic on just the state of cloud seeding as an industry.
The idea of using cloud seeding for the increased precipitation has been around for probably 75 years. In the last, I would say, decade and a half, there's been a really revolution in our ability to observe processes and also our ability to evaluate how much we can do.
So who else beyond Rainmaker is doing cloud seeding at scale right now?
Weather Modification Incorporated has several clients. Cloud seeding is done in almost every state in the western United States every winter.
Wow.
This is not new. What Rainmaker is doing is a technology that is untested, that is using drones. They are claiming that they have had results that are not too dissimilar from what Snowy found. That needs to be independently evaluated in peer review. You know, if it passes peer review muster, then that's great. I want to see this succeed. The West needs the water, so I'm very excited to see that they think they had results, but I have to wear my skeptical science hat, demonstrate it quantitatively with data. So if they do that, they're going to have a lot of customers.
So in terms of the scientific validation of this, how do you guys think in terms of like independent review or like private versus public research?
We've had like the University of Utah participating in our campaigns in Utah, NCAR, the National Center of Atmospheric Research, conducting a third-party review and audit of our seeding in the Bear River Basin for the Great Salt Lake. Long-term, I want Rainmaker to participate in peer-reviewed publication. We're working on that right now, but those cycles are 12 months or longer. So you have to keep the pace of an innovative startup and a machine while also making sure to cover your bases with peer review process so that you're not getting too far ahead of your skis on claims.
Since we first visited you guys just half a year ago, we got a lot of feedback from our viewers. I want to read out some comments to you and hear your perspective.
Please.
Oracle of Light 144 said 2 months ago, so the silver iodide is going to ultimately rain or snow upon the land. How safe is that for nature, animals, people, water systems, especially over long periods of time?
That's a great question. We increase the concentration of silver iodide in the soil after an operation by about 10 parts per quadrillion, give or take.
What is a quadrillion?
A quadrillion. If you take 1 billion and you multiply it by 1,000 and then you multiply it by 1,000 again, that is a quadrillion. So it is so low in concentration that there is no adverse human health effects, agricultural effects, or environmental impact. It's so far beneath the clean water drinking threshold that it is not a problem for the environment for the next 1,000 years. And we're doing research actively right now on alternative, organic, and naturally occurring cloud seeding agents that can replace silver iodide and remove any concern long-term about human, agricultural, or environmental health impacts.
So moving on to another comment. Afflicted pharmacologist has stated, if you seed clouds in Pendleton, what happens to the weather upwind? Would it steal water from surrounding areas? Is this why there's no snow in the Blue Mountains of Washington state?
Well, afflicted pharmacologist, you aren't suppressing precipitation downwind by cloud seeding because there is, I think, 93% of all of the water in ice and liquid phases that goes over the United States that's not precipitating over it. And so what we're doing is we're taking a sliver, barely 1% more of the water down and you still have an order of magnitude more up there above you. At some point in the distant future, decades from now, if cloud seeding covered every square inch of the country and we were operating 100% efficiently, then you could get into a scenario where it's zero sum and you have to think about where you want to put the water down. But because there's so much more up there that's continually getting naturally replenished, and we're taking just a sliver of it, it's purely positive sum. We're also seeding clouds that otherwise wouldn't naturally precipitate, and that's part of why we're not reducing precipitation downwind too.
You can't make a cloud. So if there's going to be a drought, you can't make the drought go away. You may be able to lessen the effect of the drought by making a little more water, but the drought's still going to be there. What we can do is we can try to alter the microstructure of a cloud to change the precipitation falling out. That's really what we're doing.
We're dealing with drought, we're dealing with shortening winters. Cloud seeding and Rainmaker scaling will enable us to mitigate the issues that we see right now. The end state will look like deliberate greening of deserts.
How far out do you hope to be able to reach these goals?
Yeah, calling my shot, I plan to double the flow of the Colorado River by 2031. Right now, we have about half of the water that the original Colorado River Compact thought we would have. I think we'll be able to get back to the 1920 baseline, if not exceed it, by 2031.
A lofty goal, returning the Colorado to its former glory, is not going to happen in the climate that we are creating. The Earth is heating up. The changes in the atmospheric flow patterns that global climate models predict as a result of global warming portend a much drier southwestern United States. That means you're going to have fewer opportunities to see clouds because they aren't going to be there. Changes due to the Earth's changes in the Earth climate by far are going to supersede anything you can do with cloud seeding.
What is the butterfly effect of cloud seeding?
We understand the first, second, third order effects of cloud seeding, but maybe the nth degree is hard to say. We do, though, have this risk versus risk framework. Right now, we know that if we don't do anything, the American West is going to suffer from worsening droughts. So I would rather try to make things better with an understanding that we can make things better with an attitude of do no harm, so that we catch any issues and simultaneously are trying to mitigate the ones that we have right now in front of us with drought and water scarcity.
Do you think that people should be excited that humans can now modify the weather?
I really don't like the term modifying the weather because they tend to think of that tends to cast images of, making storms, and we're making small changes in the structure of clouds to try to squeeze out more precipitation.
How is the space of weather modification US looking right now?
There's more awareness and support of weather modification than ever before. That isn't to say that everybody's stoked about it. I think that we still have a ton of work to do on education, on being transparent, and hopefully as well, the national government creates a more transparent framework for reporting on weather modification activities so that anybody can look up if something's happening in their area, and anybody that's doing it maliciously can be held to account.
I guess, how would you define sort of a malicious act of weather modification?
If you were to seed a cloud that was already forecasted to rain a lot and then make it rain more, that could cause liability for flooding. You could imagine that if you could wantonly and irresponsibly enhance precipitation to worsen flooding or avalanche, someone could deliberately do that for the sake of breaking down infrastructure or harming crops in the United States. As far as we know, nobody's doing that now, but it's a capability that the United States government should be made aware of.
Are you rooting for companies in the private sector that are advancing this technology?
It's always been private sector companies that do cloud seeding. Rainmaker is kind of a new kid on the block, but to have a long-term survival as a private company, you've got to make sure your claims are consistent with what the data shows. That's why I keep saying, publish the data, because the whole world needs water. Okay, there's water crises everywhere. There's a lot of groups out there to claim a lot of things. Folks in China have a whole army. I mean, they have an enormous weather modification operation over there, and they have all sorts of claims of what they do. I mean, the claims are a dime a dozen, but the proof is in the scientific papers.
What do you think we missed in our first video?
Well, we didn't miss the silver iodide, did we, Daxon?
Well,
did you see a Daxon
I did see
video?
that.
Yes, I want you to unpack that. That did not look very good. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, so shout out to Daxon from Soon.
I teased, but
of course, I'm hungry.